Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I am joined today, and as always, by my good friend, my business partner, the dear, the happy, the wonderful, Mr. Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnston Yellen.
In the house. In the hussy.
In the hussy.
Hussy. Thank you for welcoming me. It's lovely to be here on the first day of October.
Rabbit.
I know that is your tradition.
It is. I never knew that until Haida introduced that to me.
Man, I know they're not related, but I just finished reading Raising Hare. Amazing. Best book I've read in 2025. If anybody out there follows Jason's reading recommendations, and I know some of you do because I get texts from you, Raising Hare, just phenomenal. Really blew me away. So check it out. Enjoy it. There you go.
You want to just give people a quick idea what it's about? Is it about raising rabbits? Is it about like hair on the back of your neck?
So the hair is Hare. And then the book is set in the English countryside. It is a work of nonfiction, which is what I tend to read. Really has literally nothing to do with rabbits. I just went from our little fluffy four-legged friends in the fields to the much more interesting, dynamic hare. Hare. So I've always been a big Hair fan, not the 1960s musical.
Yeah, big Hair fan. 80s. Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
It's a lovely meditation on what it means to exist in this world. So there you go.
Okay. Listen, before we get into things, I've got a question / challenge for you. Do me a favor, close your eyes and just use your ears only, and listen to my voice as I'm talking to you. Okay.
In about 5 seconds, am I going to be impersonating a chicken?
and as you're focusing on my voice, I want you to tell me, do I sound like a woman?
Well, clearly. Yeah. Gender, Joshua, is a very complicated construct.
That is true. That is true. So, I'm not talking about, he, him, her, she, they, them. I'm just like, is my voice effeminate? Is it masculine sounding? Just from a inaudible perspective.
Yeah, I think all of our voices run the spectrum, right? I'm a huge Bob's Burgers fan, and both Linda and Tina, whom I love with all of my heart, are both voiced by men. And
there you go. Okay.
And I think there's something to that tone that I think is very appealing, and in the context of the show can be very funny.
Okay.
But yeah, if I wasn't thinking about it. There's clearly a story behind this. Somebody has given you reason to contemplate this, Joshua.
Well, my entire life, my entire adult life, I should say, if I'm on a call, right, you're calling the doctor's office, you're calling whomever, and you're talking to the other person on the line, and they say, I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't help you with that. And for a while that went away. And,
interesting.
And just the other day I have been ma'amed. And it was the first time in a while I've been ma'amed. And I thought that maybe my voice had finally changed, that maybe I do sound like Barry White finally. And I guess I don't.
Yeah, I could see somebody making that mistake, and clearly they don't mean anything by it, and clearly they're half listening to you while trying to solve a problem or remedy something in your life.
Who am I talking to?
Yeah, I think it's tickety boo. I think it's a funny little moment. You know, my old funny moment, I used to chart this on the old blog, was when I was walking around with my boys when they were young, like 15 months old, 18 months old. Kai was maybe 2, 3. Number of times either I took them to a park, or I maybe took them into school, or I was maybe at a Costco with them. The number of times I got named as their grandparent was off the chain. And so like people say shit, and it's, you lean into it, right? Just lean into it. Take ownership of it. It's nice that you've got a voice that covers the spectrum. I think that's a good thing. I think that makes you more understanding as a human being.
Oh, Jason, I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
That's why we're here, right? We're all just trying to do the best with what we've got.
Speaking of the best,
booyah, pro level transition.
You, sir,
legends,
got to speak with one of the people who I think is the very best, one of the very best in the whiskey industry. The Scott Harris is such a lovely, lovely gentleman. One of the guys who you know we've known from our very beginnings, right? In OG for sure.
Yeah.
And you know, in our early days, you know, one of the earliest American distilleries that we've worked with, and you went up to the distillery to have a lovely conversation with.
Yeah. I actually have to give a health report where Becky, who we also love, have also known for a long time, has a break in her leg. And if you know her, and we've said this in other interviews, Becky Harris is one of those people who, when you show up at the distillery, she doesn't stop. Like, she says hello, she gives you a hug, you see her in passing. She is a blur at all times. And she has been in a wheelchair for the last 2 months with this break in her leg. Oof. And she was still whizzing around the distillery on her wheelchair. She still didn't come to a stop very often. Wow. And again, right, very much to your point, when we were out and about, we're talking to people about Scott and Becky Harris at Catoctin Creek, everybody says the same thing. Legends, absolute legends, both of them. And they're helpful, and they will give you advice. Scott and I, in the course of this interview, talk a little bit about the advice, and it gets kind of funny along the way. But they've been at this for a while, and we talk about that in today's episode. And they've lived a life, right? There's no bones about the fact that they were part of Constellation, and now they're no longer part of Constellation. And Scott, being the smart, businessman that he is, didn't want to dwell on the past, right? He wanted to talk about what they're up to at Catoctin Creek now. Right? What's going on? What's the future about to be? And so we, in the course of this interview, talk a little bit about the round of funding that they are currently seeking out. And we get into that discussion a little bit. But I would be remiss at the start of this episode, before we go over to the recording, if I didn't say the whiskey release that led to me picking up my phone and texting Scott Harris about meeting at the distillery is the October 1 launch of their maple syrup cask Roundstone Rye. That's what prompted this. I've always got 101 reasons. It's an hour and 45 minutes up the road to me to go hang out in Purcellville with Scott and Becky. I'm always looking for an excuse. This October 1 launch was the one that did it for me. They were very kind to allow me access to my bottle. So we open it, we talk about it, we discuss it. This is me and Scott. And then, and this is how today's interview concludes, Scott and I relocate to the bar, the working bar. The audio may change a little bit. I haven't had a chance to listen back to the raw audio. The audio may change a little bit, maybe our Rode mics will do yeoman's work.
Oh, okay.
But we are working in an open bar, and people are seated, and people are eating, and people are drinking, and people are placing orders. And so Scott makes me one of my beloved Torontos, my seasonal drink of choice. He makes me a Toronto while I tell him what's in it. And I won't spoil the ending for anybody, but we had a lot of fun making it together. And I talk about the ingredients that we're using as we go through the making of it. And so, yeah, as they say in all the best podcasts, hang around to the end and you get to hear the making of the Toronto and then the verdict.
Yeah, beauty.
Oh, Scott Harris, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for welcoming me back.
Of course, always welcome here.
Catoctin Creek on a rainy September. But
kind of perfect drinking weather.
It is perfect drinking weather. For the interest of our listeners here, I am pouring the Single Cask Nation Catoctin Creek 3-year-old whiskey distilled from rye mash that spent all 3 years in an ex-barley wine cask.
Just for the visuals, for people at home, he's looking down at it through his bifocals at an arm's length distance so he can read the label on the bottle. It's great being old. Cheers.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? That's the level of transparency we have around here.
Right. I wanted to have a visual picture, Imagination is important.
And then also, to be clear, this is sold out on the website. I brought this today because this was a project we started with you and Becky, and then we moved it off to our own warehouse.
Right.
And we let the maturation conclude in California. Then we bottled it out there, sold it on the website, and I haven't seen you since we put this on the website.
So this is the only one I've ever had that wasn't bottled by us for you. Yes.
Exactly. So I thought it'd be fun to treat you with this today. You and I were also talking just before we hit record here that the whiskey distilled from rye mash, because it never saw new charred oak. And nobody cared a whit about it being whiskey distilled from rye mash versus rye whiskey. So
what's the top proof on this then?
We are looking at, he looks down his nose through his bifocals, at 56.8%
so that's up there.
Alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thought the barley wine did a nice job on this.
I can taste the barley.
Right. So for me, it almost manifested as like an apple crumble, apple pie. Again, fall type notes happening in here. Oh, cheers. Good health.
Cheers. To me, the barley shows up in the taste almost like when you taste a malted rye. So that kind of greenish maltiness that comes from a malted rye it's just the hint of malt from the barley wine, since of course our rye is unmalted completely.
There you go.
So I'm getting that malted rye flavor from a rye that was never malted.
Has a brightness to it as well that I really, really like in there. Yeah, again, thanks to you and Becky for trusting us. We had the idea to take the 2 empty 30 gallons that had gone into the ex-Kilchoman cask, that project that we did together.
Yeah.
We brought Rocket Frog into this, who are just up the road in Stirling, or were up the road in Stirling. Sad to see them go. And then it was New Make Spirit that went into the ex-barley wine and the ex-stout, and we just watched them.
That's great. It's still good color from that for basically being a used cask like that.
Yep. 3 years full maturation.
I'm not tasting, and maybe I just haven't delved deep enough, but the Kilchoman isn't really present here.
So different process. So this was... That Kilchoman cask was a separate release, which you and I tasted with Becky at your rick house.
Got it.
When we lost 100 bottles to the Angels over the course of 12 months.
Terrible.
Insanity. So
greedy.
But this, listen, we've just poured this just as a thing to sip as we're sitting here talking.
Great.
The place I wanted to start today was really the last place you and I chatted, which is you and Becky are once again back to being Catoctin Creek.
That's right.
You had Constellation involved for a while.
That's right.
We were talking about that on different episodes.
Right.
How are things looking for you and Becky? And how long has that been since you went back to being yourselves?
I'd have to look, but I want to say around 2021, plus
Oh
or
my
minus a
gosh.
year, that Becky and I took control back.
Oh, wow.
It's on the website somewhere. So, those, an exercise for the home reader is to delve through our news archives on the website. But yeah, we took back control. We basically bought back our shares from Constellation, and Becky and I are now the supermajority owners of the company. We still have a lot of investors, but these are like, neighborhood people, mom and pops that we invested in our original company in about 2011, through a private placement memorandum. So we raised money from just local people who were interested in what we were doing at the time. So that's really us and them again, back to the basics. So we're back in charge, and that when we did it, it was just after COVID, and of course we had the highs of 2021. I think it was after COVID was ending, and people were going crazy and buying liquid. That was kind of the apex of most of the spirits industry, and then it's been down for a couple of years past that. And what Becky and I said is, having bought our company back and gained our independence. It's a scary, scary world out there right now, but at least it's ours, right? So we have that control, and that's nice, and we can kind of set sail and do some new things.
How are you finding there's a little part of the conversation that we always knew we were going to have, but none of us really wanted to have it, which was as we were watching the rise of American craft, and you just mentioned 2011 here, that's the same number for Joshua and I with Single Cask Nation for our founding.
Right.
And so we knew that as we were in the ascendancy, and we were watching all of these craft producers coming online, right? Distilleries being born. We knew the market was never going to sustain all of them.
Right.
And we knew some were going to fall away. And we didn't wish that upon anybody.
But it's got to happen.
But we knew it was going to happen.
It's the hand of the market, right?
Right?
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, with 2011, as we sit here in 2025, do you feel almost like you're in a stronger position? Do you feel like you are gaining greater market share? What's that looking like?
If I was to give like the ultra fast version of that history, in the 2010, 2011 timeframe, even up to like 2016 probably even, we were experiencing two things. We were experiencing super amounts of imposter syndrome, right? Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Are we doing this right? We've never entrepreneured before, so do we, you're always second guessing everything of yourself. And it didn't help, all the sort of whiskey influencers who are out there going, well, you're not doing it this way. Or you get some reviewer who says, well, this is not the bourbon process. This is the way. And now, having been in it 16 years, I'm confident enough to say, is this, fuck off. Like, you can censor that if you need to. Like, fuck off. You don't make anything. You're just a fucking guy on a blog, It's like, I understand now, if we all made the same thing with the same process, then what the hell's the point?
Correct.
Right. So we have dug into our process and our Virginia style, and we're producing something that's unique. You can love it or lump it, but we're doing something special and different, and that's the joy of what we're doing. And so now I understand that, and I feel more confident about it. So in that early phase, there was that imposter syndrome. We were just not quite sure, but we were still relatively small, not many people out there doing it. And that was the phase where we were starting to get a lot of wannabes. Okay, so people who'd come into the distillery, I want to start a distillery, right? Oh, I'm a government contractor too, and I hate my job, and I would love to make whiskey. Right? And so at that time, we would cheerfully entertain the wannabes, and it got to be so much that we had to stop, right? Because there were so many people who came in with that stars in their eyes who never would amount to anything, right? They had no money, no talent, no means. And we realized that we were just wasting our time. And not to be cruel, but time was something we didn't have time for.
Sure.
And there was other people who did have means who wanted like free consulting and stuff. And I would often push back on that and say, I'll consult with you, but I have a rate. And you need to pay that rate, because the one thing I don't have is time. I work all day and I don't have time to carve out for this. That's taking away from me, with my kids or whatever.
Absolutely.
Right? And invariably, most of them never wanted to pay for that knowledge that they were so desperate to get from you. So we wouldn't. And then, I remember one couple of guys came in who wanted to start a distillery. And they were like, hey, let me take you to dinner. It's like, I can buy my dinner. Like, why don't you do my laundry? It hasn't been done for 2 weeks. Like, that would be helpful. And oh, you're joking. I was like, I'm not joking. Like, and so, that was in the first third of our like the first 5 years or so, that was what we were experiencing. Is a lot of those wannabes taking that oxygen from us, trying to get what we're getting and do what we're doing. The second 5 years that we were doing it was craft whiskey was now sexy enough and getting big enough that big money was coming in, right? So you're talking the Kevin Planks from Under Armour starting Sagamore. You're talking these guys who basically are setting up huge $10, $20 million plants overnight, right? And getting distribution everywhere in the U.S. overnight. Overnight, bottles are showing up that didn't exist the year before. And so that was very challenging, right? It was really hard to compete with that as a homegrown, still mom and pop family brand, when they have essentially infinite dollars. We were joking about Sagamore, for instance. They were probably losing $30 on every bottle to brokers and distributors and buybacks and all the fees that they were paying to get those things to fill the market, right? Wow. They were probably making $2, right? And so we didn't have the capability to do that, and so we saw our market share at that point diminishing because, how do you compete with that? Right?
Yeah,
How do you compete with that? So like we were really dominant in Baltimore, and then Sagamore came in that 5 year time frame and decimated us in Baltimore, right? And then we came back, right? Because we were a good, valuable, quality product, never changed. Yeah. People were temporarily interested in the hometown version, but that hometown version was still MGP, and so, what I'm saying, long story, is they came back to us. Like we've regained what we do in Baltimore and are respected as what we are, a craft brand there.
Well, the thing that we've always talked about, and Josh and I have always talked about with Catoctin Creek, is you were here supporting families, hiring people, paying people, supporting families in Purcellville.
Farmers and labelers.
Exactly.
And bottle makers,
right.
all of it. Yeah, all of it American made.
Right. And you and I have always talked about the fact that puts a price on a bottle. And listen, you're not the most expensive thing on a shelf, right? You still present plenty of value in the marketplace. I think so. Let's not get that out of shape. It's not like you have to buy a Catoctin Creek to support a charity, right? Right. If someone's taking $30 less on a bottle to take some of your share, you're never going to be able to compete with that until people, and that was kind of the question that I was trying to get to the heart of, is Catoctin Creek is a known commodity, right? You've been established now since 2011.
Well, and that's the nice thing. That brings me to the sort of third section, is the last 5 years, right? Is now we feel like we're sort of like the OGs. Like, I don't want to use that term on myself because I'm not trying to be egotistical, but we've been around, right? 15, 16 years now. So we've seen it all, right? And now we understand things that we didn't understand before. And as long as the juice continues to be good and the quality is good, then I think we still have a place to be, right? And so, yes, there's been shakeout. A lot of good brands, a lot of brands that I really, really admire have gone out of business completely, right? Gone forever. And that's sad. I mean, it's just sad. Let's mourn for that and have that suffering. But what that ends up doing from just a strictly, unemotional market state is it opens back up opportunity for us, right? So I'll give you an example for us in DC. Like when we first started, we were the only whiskey around here that was made locally to DC, and we owned DC. And then in that next intervening years, there were something like 5 to 7 distilleries in DC. And they definitely chipped away at market share, right? If you're going for those cocktail menus in DC who value local products, which is a lot of restaurants in DC.
Of course.
Great restaurant scene in DC. Suddenly it wasn't just Catoctin Creek on every menu. It was, all the other brands that were in DC that had come up and were truly DC brands and earned their place into those menus as well. Well, sadly, most of them now are gone. Wow. They've gone out of business one way or the other. and we have regained. It's cleared up competition for us, so it has helped us a little bit, I have to say. And I'm not jubilant about that.
Sure.
But it does make things a little bit easier on the numbers when we're trying to sell. So so we're in this downturn lately. The whole industry has been down, approximately plus or minus 20%. You see all the news. Anybody who looks, everybody's hurting from MGP to Diageo to us. And so that's happening. And it was never good. I mean, we had 12, 13 years of straight double-digit growth year over year, which is fantastic. But now it had to come down, right? And what I believe is that we're probably close to, if not in, the bottom of it right now, the trough. And I think we're going to be coming up out of it now. And so we're starting to feel quite bullish again. I was quite bearish before, and we were kind of hunkered down, in a storm, waiting, making sure we could be as close to profitable, streamlining the company, cutting out all our inefficiencies, making sure we have cash in the bank to weather these things. And that led us into a very defensive position, much the opposite of when we were growing. And it's like, spend all you want. Red doesn't matter. We're just trying to grow the top line number, right? Yeah. Just spend. Let's get salespeople in every freaking market from Paducah to Timbuktu, right? And that is a lot of money going out of the fire hose doing that. But then we had to switch that off and be like, okay, now we have to be very judicious with what we're doing, and we have to survive this, or else we won't survive it, right? And so now we're in a position where, having been in that for 2 years or so, and always focusing on the whiskey, right? Always trying to make the best whiskey. We're at the point now where we're feeling like maybe it's time to start putting our feet out there. We're feeling adventurous again. If we're using the ship analogy that I've been using, we're ready to sort of set sail and maybe chart some new waters, and that feels exciting to me again. And I'm glad to have it, because it was a hard couple of years to hunker down like that.
I'm curious for you, with a bricks and mortar distillery, with a tasting room, with a bar in said tasting room, those 2 years where you're hunkering down, did you see a drop in foot traffic?
Yeah.
You even saw
commensurate with the drop in overall traffic. So everything, tasting room visits and wholesale sales were all down, something like 20%, 11 to 20%, depending on what year. Yeah. So there were less people coming. Yeah. So I think it was larger societal trends that were at play, right? It wasn't anything wrong with what we were making. People were just choosing to choose other substances. So I think the big substances were, NA became a category all of a sudden.
Yeah, the non-alcoholic.
Right, non-alcoholic NA became a whole category that people now has a third of the space in a grocery store. Right?
Gosh.
I mean, it's a big deal, and that's good. That was mindful drinking, and I'm all behind that. In fact, when we go out, one of us will usually drink NA because the one's got to drive, right? So there's a place for that. So I don't begrudge that, but that definitely was one of the causes. The other is RTDs, right? So all the ready-to-drink cocktails in the bottles, including the seltzers and the Trulies and all that, and they're not just taking away market share from whiskey, they're taking away from craft beer and wine as well. Both craft beer and wine are much worse off, actually, as industry than we are.
Yeah.
Craft beer, we've had so many craft breweries close.
Yeah, watching that in the state of Virginia.
Frog, Dragon Hops next door, Old Ox. I mean, countless, and it's a real pity because there's some really good ones in there.
Absolutely.
But so people just shifting away from that to the RTDs, and then the third is cannabis.
Yeah.
And people, choose their intoxicant differently, and so in Gen Z, my children choose, my younger child chooses cannabis, and he doesn't really like to drink much alcohol. He'll drink some Coors Light, but he doesn't drink spirits, and he doesn't drink cocktails, and that's, there's two schools of thought there, and one's pessimistic and one's optimistic. The pessimistic one, it says Gen Z's just never going to drink spirits like we did because it's generational. You never drink what your father drank, right? Or and that may be true. But the optimist, which Becky pointed out, is that 50% of Gen Z is still under 21. So you can't say shit about it yet, right? You can't say shit about it yet. They don't know what they're going to drink. And then the question is, did you, Jason Johnson Yellen, or you, Scott Harris, drink hard whiskey like this at 25?
Yes.
I did not. I did not. I didn't come to this until I was 40.
Right.
And so that's the point.
Right.
Is that you can't write off Gen Z
Right.
yet because most people don't approach whiskey until they're at least approaching middle age.
Yeah.
I guess in Scotland you probably have it in the bottle.
No. I've been a little cheeky with my answer. I was 22, but I was at University of Aberdeen. It was Whiskey Society. It was building friends. It was
It's the national beverage.
right. It was a social thing. But,
Sure,
but
sure.
like I've said previously, I only started drinking it because I met a guy who was from Finland who wanted to drink the Scottish national beverage.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gone to the Whiskey Society. I may still not have been a whiskey drinker if I hadn't started.
And that's my
then.
point. In college, I was drinking stupid, right? Whatever the frat was pouring or whatever. But we weren't drinking like this with a glass of whiskey neat, you know. And that didn't come until I was not an entrepreneur, a connoisseur, right? Which you have to have money to be that.
And that's what I've been hearing more. Is under 30-year-olds aren't drinking what you and I call the good stuff. Because they don't have any fucking money.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. My son pays half of every month's paycheck to rent.
Right.
Rent. Yeah. So this whole podcast could go that way, and we can't go down that road. But yes, money, and whiskey is an expensive product, but it's the same thing in wine. They were talking about wine has sort of engineered itself out of being appealable to the Gen Z because they don't have good quality, low priced products, right?
Yeah,
so my son can buy a bottle of rosé and it's good and cheap, $7 a bottle, and he can enjoy that, right? But all the other stuff is so effete.
Yeah.
And it's $30 a bottle, and they're like, I don't know anything about this big red, you know, what am I going to do with this? So they don't. And so they said wine needs to do a better job of being more populist. And I think craft beer has a different problem in that craft beer was so dominated by the culture of craft beer, the bearded beer bros, right, who basically put it up on this pedestal and made it unapproachable for everybody else. And I think they kind of crafted themselves out of a general market with that, unfortunately, because I think that was a mistake.
I think the component we've been talking about, and it's very much what you were saying, and if you wouldn't call yourself an OG, I would call you an OG. And we have, I think, become quite fortunate in a space with Single Cask Nation where some people are calling us the American OG of American IB, and that's very kind as well. But I think we have spent 15 years building the nation around our single cask at Cask Strength that we've now got a large group of people who for 15 years haven't been there or weren't there or weren't even looking to be there. Right. And we now need to take our OG nation and say, who do you know who needs to be introduced to this?
So here's an interesting thought for the podcast. One of the things that we've always done counterculture since we've begun the company was we always made a lower priced option that was supposed to be mass consumed, right? The Roundstone Rye 80 proof is in this market, $45, in most markets, $39 bottle of single barrel, pot stilled, 100% rye made by 3 people.
Wow.
That is probably too low of a price, right? But we have this strange Bernie Sanders notion that it's whiskey for the people, right? We make this for people.
Same as.
And in that journey of 16 years, those whiskey gatekeepers, self-appointed gatekeepers, you know, would be like, well, you should just make an $80 bottle of cask proof or a $90 or $110 bottle of cask proof. Never make the Kool-Aid, you know, for everybody. And yet our number one seller is that 80 proof rye. Right, our number one seller, the one that pays all the bills, is that $45 of 80 proof rye, and I almost now think of it as the anti-influencer whiskey. Like this is good quality stuff. I have plenty of awards with double golds and platinums to show you for it, so I don't have to apologize for this. It's 80 proof. It's super smooth. It's easy drinking. You take it to a party, and if somebody pours it in their Sprite, it's not the end of the world. Right? Do you like it? Does it taste good? Great. Buy another bottle, right? It's sort of like mass consumption. Becky calls it her front porch sipper. It's like it's not too spicy. It's easy going, and it just tastes good. It hits the right notes. So it's more kind of about vibes than it is about like trying to make something so precious that somebody's going to split with $120 out of their pocket. And what we're seeing now in this downturn is a lot of companies. I just about threw a name out there. A lot of companies that built their company on these expensive bottlings only are now coming out with $45 offerings.
Of course.
Right? Because that's what people are not. They're paying less. They want to pay less for their whiskey.
Well, I think,
and we've been there the whole time.
But isn't it also the idea of the aspirational pour, right? Like we've had it in Scotch for decades. It was, if you could get people to like the 12-year-old, you could talk them into liking the 15-year-old more, or aiming for the 15-year-old. If you like the 15, aim for the 18, and so on up the line. But you needed a natural place to hook them in.
Yeah.
And I think one of the last times I was hanging out here, Becky was working on the latest or the biggest batch of the hot honey. And when I tasted that, what a phenomenal cocktail ingredient there. Yeah. You know, I'm sure there are people who sit and quietly sip that on their porch as well. But that just seemed like such a natural cocktail ingredient.
We wanted to do it's our fastest growing spirit.
There you go.
It is a flavored whiskey. We now make I didn't want to do it for years, right? Because I was one of those snobs too. Oh, we don't want to be a flavored whiskey. What the heck, you know? If you want Fireball, just put some cinnamon sugar in there. Like, you know, I was that snob, right? And Becky had to come to me, and it took a couple years of downturn to be like, gosh, I sure would like to make some money. So now I'm like, hey, bring me that sweet flavored honey.
You there.
Yeah. But honestly, we do it in a way that we can be proud of because it is craftsmanship still. We make it with real honey. It's not flavoring. It's not sugar plus honey flavoring, which is everybody else, by the way. Yeah. Honey is a pain in the ass to work with. It doesn't dissolve easily. It's got sediment in it because of pollen and everything. So it is a pain in the ass, but Becky's always said, as a craft producer, what separates us from the majors isn't about quality, because the majors make good stuff too. We can't say, like in beer, that Bud Light was garbage and we make good beer because Bud Light was garbage. We can't say that. Woodford Reserve has always been good, right? The big guys have always been good, right? So you're not competing on that basis. What we have to do in craft is we have to highlight our regionality. You're getting a Virginia rye, that's different, and it tastes different, and that's terroir. And we have to be willing to do things the big guys won't, right? Like pot stilling for 8 hours, right? Not instead of a beer still for 8 minutes.
On grain.
Right, on the grain. Or
which is a pain in the arse to work
spending a week mixing honey into the whiskey and then racking it off like a wine process so that you still retain the flavor and you don't lose it through filtration, right? We have to do the hard stuff that they won't do. Yeah. And that's why it's craft, and that's why it's more expensive, but that's why it's better. When people taste our hot honey, and they've had honey whiskeys before, you know, for the big brands, and they taste ours. They don't even taste it yet. They bring it, the glass within 2 inches of their nose, and they're like, I can smell the honey.
Yeah.
I can smell the honey. And what the honey gives them, apart from that smell, is the mouthfeel, the flavor, and the sweetness.
The texture.
And it tempers the heat in the chilies. So it really is just a magical drink.
So if the Roundstone rye at 80 proof, if we're seeing it in Virginia for 45 and 39 elsewhere, where is the hot honey then falling in Virginia?
A bit more, right? Because we actually start with the 80 proof. People expect it because it's flavored to be cheap. It's actually more because it's more work, more ingredients than the regular 92 proof or 80 proof Roundstone. So it usually, if the Roundstone in the U.S. market is the 80 proof is around $39, then the hot honey is going to be coming in around $42, $43.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so not a lot more.
A few dollars for a lot more work.
You know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot. The honey's not cheap. Honey's expensive. You know, real honey. And so that's part of the reason why. So if you were making this to be cheap, like in $20 bottle, like the big guys do, what you're going to have to, because it's a flavored liqueur, you're going to drop the proof down to 30%, not 80 proof, right? So 60 proof. B, you're going to probably use inferior whiskey because you don't have to. You're going to load it up with sugar, which is cheap, and splash in your little flavorings, and that's cheap too. Yeah. So that's how you make it cheap. And we know how to do that. We're just not going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting that you can, on one level, be compared to another product, but really at heart, you're two very different products.
Very different. And so what Becky was noticing is some of the more influential spirits inside industry, you know, news sources like the Spirits Business and some of those, you know, were writing about the premium flavored whiskey products, you know, which like Garrison Brothers with Honeydew and those, you know, that are using good premium ingredients, and still maintaining that premium, even though it's flavored. Flavored doesn't mean cheap.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good message to send out to people.
Yeah.
And I've always said I'm a snob of the highest caliber.
Of course.
So
aren't we both?
So it's good to hear this other way of thinking.
Yeah, well, and it's taken me a while to come around to all this as well.
Right. That's very fair.
In the end, Becky's right. She's always right.
She's always right.
Yeah.
There's never been a doubt about that, Scott. Quick question on this front, and then I want to pivot to building again.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, and certainly in listening to you, I said about beer for years, which was, if you were coming online, and I kind of moved this into spirits as well, if you were coming online in the last 5, maybe 6 years, if you came in thinking national, it maybe wasn't the best way to think initially. Mm-hmm. Think local, think about getting close to the edge of your own state's boundaries, maybe think about crossing a boundary.
Right.
As we sit here in Purcellville, Virginia, you've talked DC across a border. You've talked Baltimore across a border. Yeah. What do you think the current landscape looks like for national distribution today? Yeah. National distribution on a local producer.
Great question. So today, and you're in the business, you probably understand this where your listeners may not. Today, the possibilities of getting distribution as a brand new fledgling company are next to zero.
Yeah.
It absolutely just isn't possible. The distributors are full up. They've been in a downturn for 2 years. They want to cut inventory out of their warehouses. They don't want to take anything new on, especially anything unproven. And you can say, this is Uncle Festus, the best whiskey, that was made, and the recipe of this, and I've got all this marketing, and they just don't even answer the phone. How do you even get distribution if they won't answer the phone? Yeah. You just can't make it happen, right? Yeah. So it is not possible. The reason we have distribution is because we got it 16 years ago, right? And we've had those relationships, and we've built those relationships, and we keep them. I'm not saying every distributor works great for us. There are some who are just not able to move our product, who have either incentives elsewhere or they just don't have the time to think about it. Sure. And that's just the reality of the business. We've got good ones and bad ones, just like everybody else. But if you're coming in fresh, you have zero chance. And so today, just this year, I had a wannabe. We used to get one wannabe a week. Now we get one a year.
Oh my gosh!
Right? So that tells you a lot right there. Yeah. And this guy called us and said, "Hey, I'm starting a distillery, and would you give me some advice on things?" And the first advice I gave him was, I just laughed maniacally on the phone. I was like, in the worst possible time, at the worst possible, you're starting a distillery, you fucking idiot. I didn't say that, but it came across in the subtext. And so, the only business plan today, and here's my one piece of free advice. If anybody listening wants my advice from this point forward, it costs you. But this one is free. If you want to start a distillery today, the only business plan I think that can work, unless you have super deep pockets, and here I mean 10 million, is that you start what I call the Cracker Barrel model, right? So you put a building on an interstate with a big sign, a billboard that says, get off here for whiskey, moonshine, whatever, right? And then you go in there and you have the Cracker Barrel model where you have a restaurant that's selling food, right? And in Virginia, you have a separate store, and that can be just a partition or whatever, and you sell those bottles in that store because you can't sell them in the restaurant.
Sure.
In Virginia, you have to have a store. Right? And so you have the store in the front, just like Cracker Barrel, right? And that's how you make your money. You sell everything you make out of your door. That's the only possible option right now. There you go. There is no other way. And so the distilleries that I know that are succeeding presently have a huge local following and no distribution.
Wow, no distribution.
Except for perhaps in the state of Virginia, which gives some preference to state producers, right? Yeah. But your chances of getting that product, say, into California from Virginia are zero. Yeah. Right? Your chances of getting that into Boston are zero. Yeah. Right? They're just not. Because guess what? Boston has 30 distilleries too. Yeah. And people have a predilection to buy their stuff. Right? So you're competing against those locals. We see all that in Texas. Texas was very difficult for us because Texas is, I think everybody can agree, a state that has its own peculiar patriotism, right? People from Texas are just so freaking Texas proud. They are. Right?
It always have
been.
It's
infused through them, right? Pee Wee Herman's movie, where he just sings the first bars of
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.
That's Texas. And so coming in with a Virginia brand, they're like, I'm
Yeah, not Texas.
Not
Yeah,
Texas.
not
I'd
Texas.
have to put a big star of Texas flag on there to make it sell. So that's the problem with competing nationally too, is you're competing against the local favorites now. And there are local favorites in every state of the nation.
Is the money there to be a mom and pop who opens and makes a living from selling everything out their door and having a restaurant on site? Are there enough in the margins?
It is much more difficult than other types of business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with all the regulation and all the take that the government takes, it would be easier to make jelly and sell it at the farmer's market.
Wow.
It would be more profitable to make jelly and sell it at the farmer's market. There are so many restrictions on how and when and where we can sell our products. And these are peculiar to your own individual states, right? So Maryland may be more liberal. Vermont, you may be able to do anything you want. There's differences state to state.
Sure.
But in Virginia, it is very difficult to do. And so you have to be really good on your business planning, right? And that's the part that a lot of people just kind of wing it, right? They just kind of, let's throw some stuff together and see how it goes. And before you know it, you're either losing scads of money or whatever. So I think you have to come in with some pretty good business acumen to make it work. It's a much more difficult business than a lot of other businesses.
I'm also curious right now, and again, this is a little bit of what you said earlier. Do you think in the last 10 years, those who showed up with $10 million to launch a distillery, do you think those same people still exist, but they're showing up with $10 million and they're doing a cannabis project?
Yeah.
Do you think that's currently seen as the place to turn your money around?
Yeah. And I think, private equity, when you get into that, that's a whole nother conversation. But I mean, there's a lot of things happening in Bitcoin and AI and all these other things. And I think that's attracting a lot of money.
When I start talking cannabis, I'm getting out of my sandbox.
Yeah.
When we throw that to AI and crypto and I've got nothing, nothing
exactly.
at all.
Me too. And it's all highly speculative and therefore highly
I'm really
highly risky, right? I think whiskey was attractive to a lot of really rich, successful people who had done something, like owned a apparel company, right? And knows about retail merchandising and stuff like that, really valuable knowledge to have. And then it's like, but I love whiskey. And all the stuff that we use to sell that bottle, right? All the charm and the history and the, sitting around the barrel house and swirling it, all the stuff that we're guilty of marketing our stuff with is what gets people so freaking excited that they're like, I want to do that too. I don't want to just watch porn. I want to be in one. It's like, that's the problem is that, and then everybody wants to do it.
Yeah, that only ends one way and it's early and it's messy.
Exactly. At least in porn, it's only 3 minutes and you're done, You don't have to watch the whole movie. Sorry, I really took us off the rails.
You really
there.
did, Scott. I've seen a different side of you.
Oh boy!
So let's transition.
That's the other thing that's changed, by the way. I would have been much more reserved in these conversations. Even 2 years ago, I would have been very reserved, and now I'm at the point in my career where I just don't care. Honestly, I'm being totally serious.
Yeah, I believe you.
I just don't care, and it's made my interviews with journalists just much more fresh and interesting because I tell it like it is. And I tell these wannabes who call me like it is. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing you could do right now. And don't waste your time. I've become Simon Cowell. I'm going to tell you a vicious bit of truth that's going to help you. If you listen to me.
Well, and you haven't helped anybody by blowing smoke, right?
No,
You've just helped them blow $1 million if you blow smoke.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I might say a harsh word, but I've saved you $1 million.
Right.
Would you make that trade?
Open a jelly company because jelly's awesome.
I like this idea, jelly.
Yeah, we should do it.
So with this said, you are bullish. You are seeing a turnaround.
Yeah.
You've got more energy here. You've got wind in your sails, and you have launched a round of funding.
We have
for Catoctin Creek.
That's right. That's pretty recent news. Yeah.
I'm on your privileged email list.
Oh boy.
And so I received an email inviting me to engage in a round of funding.
That's right.
And talk to us about that. What's the goal there, and what's the use, and what kind of numbers are we talking here?
So just to set the stage, there's different ways to fund a company. We have done what's called a private placement memorandum, which basically is a vehicle that is properly done through the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? We have to fill out what's called a Form D. And it's a document that basically says we're raising money, but this is a risky venture. You may never see your money again, right? Because this is risky. This is not a FDIC insured anything. This is not a stock on the market, right? That has a track record. This is a small company, and so all the warnings are in there, for that kind of investment. Therefore, you need to be what's called an accredited investor. So that means that you have to be wealthy enough that this money doesn't cause you to go destitute.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so that's required by law, right?
wow.
Is that so? So there's a $25,000 minimum, and that sort of weeds out, every guy who just wants to put $100 in.
Yeah, you're
Plus,
not a Kickstarter.
We can't, right? And we can't, manage all the paperwork and bureaucracy for those low levels. We can't have $20,000 $100 investors, right?
Yeah.
So this accredited investor, you have to sign basically an affirmation that you have the wealth and the means to be able to do this business, and it's got all the language in there. Having done that, then it's essentially you become a share owner of the business, just as if we were selling stocks on the market, and so you have some piece of the company, and the ultimate goal for one of these types of investments is either if the company starts to generate massive regular profits, right, which today we're not really quite there yet, which is totally expected for a company like ours. Sure. If you are generating massive regular profits, then you're getting a dividend, right? And so you get some, monthly bill or some, not a bill, a monthly check, $1,000 a month, whatever it is, depending on your share of the company and what the profits were. Or what's usually more likely the case is that you're waiting for a buyout, right? And so Becky and I love this business, right? But we're both, high 50s, almost 60s. We're not going to do this forever, right? I hope. And, at some point we need to retire. And so there has to be an exit strategy, right? And so as much as people hate to think about it, someday somebody else has to carry this torch, right? And so there's a chance then for some kind of a buyout, right? And that's where the investors would really make their money, right? And so we've built a company that, you could argue plus or minus is worth $15 million, right? That's probably, it's like a house. Like, what's the market tell you this is worth? Who knows? I mean, somebody may only pay $4 million, somebody may pay 30. Who knows? But if we estimate, say today we're at 15, then in 5 or 10 years, if we see, some X multiple on our revenue, on our EBITDA, then we would have, be worth something much larger. And so you say, okay, I invested when they were worth 15 million, now they're worth 100 million, 5, 7, 10 years from now, that's a pretty nice payoff. And that's the goal of the investment, is that you would get a piece of that. Gotcha. So that's where we're at. Yeah, we put out the memo, it's a PPM, and if any of your listeners are interested, they can just hit the website, do the contact page, that goes directly to me, and say interested in that investment you were talking about, and I can send them an NDA, which basically says we're going to tell you some secret sauce, and then in the secret sauce we have like a little executive summary of the business plan that says these are what our plans are for that money, right? If we raise $1 million, if we raise $2 million, $3 million, this is what we're going to do with it. And there's some pretty exciting things in there, some new products that we want to launch that we think we could take pretty quickly into the national market. High profit products, a new location. So we've got this quaint, location in Purcellville, Virginia, but Purcellville is Mayberry and they roll up the streets at night. So, taking another location into a high traffic area, like closer to the city, something like that, where you have busy nightlife. Sure. That is in the plan as well. And then there's some other cool efficiencies that we have in the plan that talk to, trying to sort of hockey stick that revenue number.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we have a very diverse listenership.
Yeah. Who knows?
So if it opens at 25,000, but you're accepting more than that, I'm
encouraging it.
Encouraging more than that.
Yeah.
Well, what was it you said? Go to the website. Go to the website.
Yeah. Go to catoctincreek.com and hit the contact page and just send me a message from there that says investment. heard you had doing an investment, and then we'll send them the details from there.
That's awesome. Oh, please take him up on that. Well, I've done my own little bit. I have finished my first round of Catoctin.
Indeed, I have too.
I'm picking up the bottle and I am looking down my bifocals again.
I'm so sorry to bring that up.
This episode drops October 1, 2025.
The exact day that the cask proof maple drops.
And so I have been buying the maple syrup cask from you over the years. I brought back one of my former batches this day.
Interestingly enough, the one you brought back is exactly 10 years prior.
Get out of town.
Yeah, 10 years earlier. B15, so we're at B25 right now.
Oh my God.
So this is 10 years ago. We'll see how we did.
Oh, this is awesome. So I have just opened. I am pouring. The color on this is terrific. Your strength on this, 55.5?
Yeah, a little bit lower.
Is that cask strength? Is there some type of softening
it's
of
cask
that? Is there a
strength.
batch
Then I think the maple also brings it down just a bit.
Sure.
But we generally are coming out at 57 to 58. You know, the humidity in our climate draws the water draws the alcohol from the cask.
Well, and I'm just looking. 10 years ago, that was 56.7.
So it's fairly consistent.
Yeah, 55.5 today.
Within a percentage.
Bottle number 357 of 375. Gosh. This is exciting. When I reached out to you, I saw the announcement for the October one, and I said, hey, can I come and talk to you? You've got, obviously, there's you and Becky being back from Constellation, there's the round of funding,
right?
But there's also a bottle drop.
Drop, yeah.
A seasonal bottle drop. And I did ask if I could secure my bottle so we could open it for this interview.
Well, this episode is taping live on October 1st, so
exactly.
No problem.
I'm definitely not in DC today having lunch at Bourbon Steak, a natural place for Jason to have lunch.
Is that where you're going to go on that
It
day?
is. I may have a cocktail for lunch on October 1.
Good.
So for our listeners here, how did maple syrup cask come to be?
Okay, so
like a bit of an origin. And
this is a great story. Actually,
I
I love to tell it because we don't get to say it very often either. So this starts out first and foremost as our Roundstone rye line, right? So this is a 100% rye that is done in our stills in the same style as all of the Roundstone that we produce, and then aged for its appropriate time. So it's fully on finished whiskey. Now, when Becky is pulling whiskey from the barrel ready for bottling, she'll just notice differences in the whiskey, right? And because they're single barrel, she's segregating those differences into 3 different product lines to get consistency. So there's the Roundstone 80 proof, which is the smoothest, easy drinking stuff that comes out. The Roundstone 92 proof, which is our distiller's edition, if she notices some extra spiciness that came from the wood. Or there's occasionally, we'll get the cask proof, 1 in 100. You know, we'll get a barrel that's just like, oh my God, it's so smooth and it's so integrated. This has to be what it's going to be. And every now and then she'll take some of that and she'll reserve it or pour it into secondary casks that contained maple syrup. So in Highland County, Virginia, the least populated, that's actually pretty close to where you live, Highland County, just west of you, Bridgewater area.
I'm Bridgewater.
Yeah, perfect. Just west of you there in Highland County.
Oh, gosh.
It's largely Amish country. There's not much out there.
Yep.
We have a farmer who does maple syrup for us. So it doesn't just happen in Canada and Vermont. We have it in Virginia. He's got all the trees tapped. Maples grow quite well here, and he has maple syrup, and he grows it for us. And we give him barrels, and he ages his barrels, and then we sell the maple syrup on our shelves, right? And so we've done that forever. And so having that maple syrup cask is, I think we were one of the first ones to start putting it out. You see it everywhere. Even Glenmorangie now has one.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? But
absolutely.
It was so rare when we first started doing it. And we were just doing it because everybody at that time was doing sherry cask and port cask. And we were like, what can we do that's different?
Yeah.
And so we did the maple syrup cask. And it's been a steady, popular favorite since we started doing it. It is a seasonal for us once every season, and roundabout autumn, October, like when wouldn't you want to have a maple whiskey? It's perfect, right? It's our version of pumpkin spice.
That's exactly the joke I was going to make. As I'm sitting here, there is spice to this. There is warmth. There is richness from the maple syrup. And it absolutely makes me think of seasonality.
Let's put on big chunky sweaters and stroll down in our woolen kilts. I mean, it's wonderful. It makes me so in the mood for fall.
It's the whole reason I'm wearing flannel today, is we were going to open the maple syrup cask.
Exactly. So that's the genesis of it, and it is locally produced maple syrup. So again, just trying to dig into as much local as we can. Absolutely. And I love the fact that we have this, Amish County in Virginia that we use, and it's a family thing. It's the little things like. His daughter, she's like 7. She made me a picture.
Oh, nice! Just on the wall over there,
and I keep it up on next to my desk because it was just a cute little thank you note for working with her dad.
That's brilliant.
It's sweet, and it's these things that at the end of my life, I'll be proud of.
Right.
Not how much whiskey I sold.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the people you met along the way, and how did you treat them?
Cheers to that. So yeah, that's it. It's a delicious dram.
Yeah, this is excellent. I know that you guys have really done a good job of selling the alcohol on your website and shipping.
Yeah.
I know I'm within the state of Virginia, and so I can have it shipped. I also come and see you and pick it up.
Yeah, we're allowed to ship in Virginia from Virginia ABC now. That's fully legal. And even to restaurants. So if you have any restaurant listeners, we can do stickers and make it legal and all that for your restaurant. But outside of Virginia, we go through basically, a third-tier chain. So we're going through a retailer in Washington, D.C., which basically is boxing and shipping all the products on our behalf to keep it all legal, keep it all above board.
Yep.
So if you live in Idaho, if you live in Tennessee or New York, you can usually get our product. I think there's only like 4 or 5, 6 states where you can't ship it.
Okay.
And that's typically what I've been told is that's basically the SEC. So any place in the Southeastern Conference, the Bible Belt, is where Mississippi, Alabama. You may not be able to get it down there, but that's y'all's fault for being down there, not ours. So yeah, those states I think are more restrictive.
And then how much for the bottle?
These are going to, and the Virginia price on these is going to be around $89.
That's still a good price, man.
Yeah,
that's
a fine price.
Really good.
Fully cask proof. Single barrel craft whiskey. I mean,
That's, oh my gosh. Yeah.
We don't sell much over 100. Our rabble rouser goes for 99, and that's about it. But that's just because there's only 1,000 bottles a year usually.
Now, what percentage of those bottles do you think will sell on October 1, on launch day?
Usually we'll get in a few dozen orders, but we're not going to sell out on the first day. We make quite a bit of this now. We kind of ready for the market.
Gotcha.
And we want this to last usually through October, November, December.
Right.
And then we might have some smattering of it left in January, but by January it's usually kind of running out.
Yeah, that checks out. No, that's great, because I know you and I have talked in the past about that old problem of people were queuing up the block and things were selling out, and people at the back of a queue had waited but then didn't get the thing. And people hear like you sold out a full cask on day of launch. Great news. It is, but it isn't. But it also comes with its own problems. And so knowing that you've got a season for this.
Right. I hated it.
I think that's really
happened.
Cool.
When we did have originally, before we could sell online, we did have people queuing up, and we did have to tell people, I know you waited 2 hours for this, and I just sold the last guy in front of you. It's the worst. Like, it just hits me in the gut. It's the worst possible thing. I'm like, I will give you a bottle from my home bar before having you go through that trouble, because I am so sorry for you. Like, I would take bottles out of my home bar and give it to them, because I was just like, oh, I feel so bad.
Yep.
Yeah. So when we were able to move all of our bottle launches online, it just made a lot of things better and easier for us and easier for everybody else. Like, it's like getting tickets for the Beyonce concert, right? You got to get on there and you got to get them, but you'll get them if you get on and do it, right? That, but at least you didn't have to, like, at least you can be in your bathrobe sitting at your kitchen table. Right? You don't have to be waiting out in front of my door in February or something.
Hopefully not to see Beyonce.
Well, you might. She's a fan. I've heard she's a fan.
So we're going to transition, because one of my favorite things at this time of year is making a Toronto. And I like to use your maple syrup cask to make my Torontos.
Okay.
And I think the way we're talking here, we may include some of this local maple syrup in this Toronto as well. So
fantastic.
So let's take a 2-minute break here.
Okay.
We're going to reconvene, and we're going to be set up at the bar top.
Is this where you play the commercials?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is how we make the real money.
Okay, got it.
Welcome back to the front bar for Catoctin Creek here. We're now looking onto the street front in Purcellville. Scott and I have lined up our ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and give Scott the ingredients for him to make me a Toronto.
Wonderful.
Maybe make us a
Us
Toronto.
a Toronto. A couple Torontos.
Right. So what's going to happen is I'm going to give Scott the quantities that he will ultimately split. So if you're making for one person, please half what I am going to say here, unless you like a really, really big Toronto. So we're going to start out. Scott has been, you gave me the word for this, Scott, cooling down the glass is
Called
frappe.
It's a frappe, yeah. In the old recipes from the Prohibition era, you would see for a Sazerac, for instance, it would say frappe the glass. And that simply means put ice in it with water and you're pre-chilling the glass. It's the same as if you are at home and you're a martini drinker and you stick your glasses in the freezer.
That's it.
Right. You want an ice cold glass when you put the drink in it.
That's what we're here to do. So first things first, we're going to do 4 ounces of Catoctin Creek maple syrup cask.
Is that per drink, Jason?
That is definitely, if you're making this at home for one person, 2 ounces of rye will be sufficient.
2 ounces. So we're going 4 for the both of us.
There we go, 4 for both.
Okay, there we go. That's now in the drink.
And now this might end up being a little bit easier in this quantity. For 2 people, we're going to do a half ounce of Fernet.
We have 2 Fernets here.
We're going to use California Fernet.
Perfect.
Which is kind of a craft ingredient. Represented by JVS in California, in the state of California. So I actually got this bottle from Joshua, and I've been enjoying it with my Torontos.
Yeah, I had it just before we went back on air, and it's a really beautiful version of Fernet. I love it that it's California. It's less of the mint and a little more of the woodiness of it, but very pleasant.
I think it works in the Toronto at this time of year. Yeah. We're then going to do a half ounce for 2 people of the maple syrup.
Okay.
And this is the local maple syrup you were talking about?
That's right. This is from Highland County, Virginia. This is basically an Amish farm that does maple syrup for us in Virginia. And then we sell the syrup, but we also will use those barrels for making our maple cask rye that we have here.
What a wonderful thing to have going on. And then talking about local, at this point in my house, I would reach for the Angostura bitters.
Right.
You pulled out the Roundstone bitters here at Catoctin Creek.
We no longer actually make these. The company we worked with went out of business.
I'm sorry
sadly.
to hear that.
It's just one of the casualties of the industry. But when we were making these, the ingredients, we wanted a bitters that was similar to Angostura, but represented local ingredients, right? And so the ingredients we have here are things you'll typically find in bitters, plus the local stuff, right? So orange zest, dried orange peel, honeysuckle, juniper berries, chicory root, grapefruit peel, lemon balm, birch bark, orange peel, dandelion root, rose petals, and gentian.
Oh my gosh.
So about half of those ingredients are things you'd find growing in the woods, around this area.
So these are getting added to the mixing glass, which has the ice already in it.
No, it doesn't actually. They took my ice.
Oh, he took the ice.
Yep. Hey, Santi.
Ice is on its way back.
I need
to
the
be clear,
ice.
We are working. We're working in an active bar right now.
We are actually running full service here today, so I'm competing with my own bartenders. They're
Paying
probably like,
customers demanded the ice here.
the owner is such a pain in the ass. All right, so we're going to give some healthy scoops of ice in there, and I am done with the ice. And we're going to give that a nice little stir.
How many times do you like to stir?
I like to stir for, 20 seconds until I start to get really thirsty. All right, so there we are.
Okay.
Okay. And now we're going to, basically, once you put the ice water into the glasses, it's time to dump the ice water out, right?
Perfect.
So they're perfectly chilled now. And so I will just go over to the sink and dump the ice into the thing. We have beautifully frosted chilled glasses. Excellent. I'm going to grab a strainer and we're going to pour into the glasses.
And then I have just peeled the very outside zest of an orange here, and I have just given it a twist.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And I've popped it. I have not sparked it. I've not lit it. I have not slapped it.
But you've slid it into the pool like Scarlett Johansson dipping into the water of a California pool. Just beautiful piece of elegance and perfection in its own right.
I am known for my elegance.
Yes.
These look fantastic,
Here we are.
Scott.
Cheers.
To your very good health in a Nick and Nora glass.
Thank you. Dude, that's awesome.
That's a Toronto.
That's delicious.
That's what I drink
Nicely
all
done.
the way through this season.
Nicely done. That is a good drink. I was actually not familiar with this drink beforehand. So now I have a new drink at home.
Oh my gosh, that might be one of the best Torontos I've had.
The Fernet's a nice choice there too.
Yeah,
I really like that California Fernet.
California Fernet really works. Well, regular listeners to the podcast have heard me talk about Torontos for several seasons now. Here I am out spreading the gospel. Scott Harris has been so kind to make me one here at the distillery. Listen, Scott, to a very successful OND and beyond.
Hey,
Great
thank
to
you so
see
much,
you,
Jason.
mate.
Always a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Firstly, Jason, I continue to be jealous every time, every interview we have with Scott and Becky Harris. It's you going to the distillery. I've yet to get there. I need to get there.
Here's my challenge to you, Joshua Hatton.
All right, go ahead.
I'm very lucky, as you rightly point out.
Yeah.
I've got Catoctin Creek an hour and 45 minutes from me.
Right.
I've got Virginia Distillery Company an hour and 5 minutes from me.
Right.
And I get to work the Seattle market, where I always make time to stop at Westland. These are three distilleries that I could check in on once every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And those are my go-to for conversations. Those are my go-tos for how's the industry looking? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you excited about? What are you working on? I'm curious because you're Mr. Connecticut with your brewery scene up there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what do you have an hour from your door? What do you have an hour and 45 minutes from your door?
From a brewery?
From a distilling point of view, and you don't have to answer this right now, but I'm curious to know more about the Connecticut scene. We've had the privilege of Connecticut retail.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your distilling scene. You've even got a couple of borders not too far away from you, from New York State and Massachusetts.
That's a good point. I mean, here in Connecticut, we've got Litchfield Distillery, right, which is about an hour and 5 away from me. And, they for years were sourcing and didn't really hide that, but they distill their own now.
There you go.
And
Litchfield.
Litchfield, right? Beautiful, absolutely beautiful part of the country, state and country. And then in Simsbury, Connecticut, which is, again, another about an hour away from me, really small distillery run by a father-son duo right in Simsbury, and they make remarkable bourbon. Really lovely guys. Listeners of the podcast as well, Padcost.
Thank you. Always appreciate it.
In fact, they did a release. Oh, man, do I have the bottle? I got the bottle somewhere. They did a special release. I did a visit to their distillery maybe 2-3 months ago, and the son in the duo he went on a honeymoon, and they have a very specific process. I don't want to go over their process, but part of it requires a specific overseeing. And he couldn't oversee that part of the process because he was going on his honeymoon. And when he came back,
excuse ever.
He came back to something very special. and I bought a bottle of this bourbon, and it's a remarkable little bourbon. It's really nice, Jason. I'll have to send you a sample of it.
Thank you.
And so I said, I kept on calling it the honeymoon cask, and he has since called it the honeymoon cask and calls it the honeymoon cask.
Dude, I'm gonna wrap your knuckles here. I need an episode about this. I need an interview here. I need to hear a tasting of this.
We need to have them on. There you go. Okay. There you go.
Get in your car. Get driving.
Powderman.
Let me be jealous of you having that access.
Okay. Done. Perfect. So there you go. So you've got Litchfield, you've got Powderman, and then who else do we have? I can't think off the top of my head.
Two's good. I had two.
Yeah,
I had two. You've got two. If you had three, then I'd have to start bringing out.
Oh, New York, Tuttletown Distillery, right? Hudson Valley.
Of course.
Right. Talk about OGs of craft distilling right now.
How far is that from you?
Maybe 2 hours or so.
Okay.
Right. First owned by the Renzos, Ralph Lorenzo, and really OGs of craft distilling, and always loved them and what they were doing. And
I tell you, who's in the Hudson Valley is Ruth Reichel, one of my dream interviews. Let's start putting together a Hudson Valley trip. Get some Tuttletown, get some Ruth Reichel going.
Done.
Done. All right, there we go. Production meeting over. What did we do today? We spoke to Scott Harris.
Yes, that's so. I led with firstly, Jason. Here's my jealousy, and secondly,
goodbye.
Secondly, thank you so much to Scott for once again coming onto the podcast, and thirdly, Scott. Oh, every time I see pictures of him, he's been in the New York Times. He's been, you see pictures of him all over, and he is almost always wearing his Single Cask Nation shirt.
Yep.
And I love that. I love that. Yeah,
really great for us as well.
Yeah.
It continued healing to Becky. Continued success to Scott and Becky. Good luck with that round of funding. We said it in the interview. If you are interested, if that is a thing that fits your budget, remember entry is $25,000 and then above. You have to sign a legal document that whatever money you send along will not bankrupt you if you lose it. But go to their website, have a look at their contact, as paging Steve Hawley. As Scott said in the interview, if you reach out via the contact page, he's the guy reading the message. So just pop in that you're interested in funding. And you heard that in the interview, Joshua. There's an NDA to sign before you commit to making the investment. There's some Catoctin Creek secrets to be shared.
I got a secret.
But you don't get access to that secret unless you are a serious investment partner. And then final thing for me, Joshua.
Yep.
This drops October 1. This maple syrup cask. It is a single barrel. It will go live October 1. It's live as long as this episode is live. That's poorly stated. It goes live, the bottling.
Yeah.
When our episode goes live, if you're listening to this episode 3 years in the future, they likely are sold out of this cask.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's a good point.
So as Scott says in the interview, they expect to be selling this October, November, December. It's the perfect season for it. And again, you've heard the verdict. Get this and start making Torontos with it. It fits the bill so beautifully.
Yeah. So my question for you before we get out of here, we each got a bottle of the maple cask from 2015. And that is that's what I'm sipping on right now, right? Remarkable, absolutely remarkable rye whiskey. How does this new single cask compare to that older bottling?
It's always tough to say, right? Because I've been nursing mine for a while. I've also bought others in the interim and poured through them in my Torontos as well. Oh, this is my Toronto pour. Like, get this bottle and make Torontos from it.
The new one.
The annual release.
The annual release.
Annually, this is my get for my Torontos.
Oh, so you just keep on doing it. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the one thing for me is it's always got a consistent warmth. It's always got a consistent warm brown sugar note to it. And as you and I always talk about, it's got a texture and it's got a heft.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. And even Scott and I were talking about this the other day. This is coming in at 55.5% alcohol.
Solid. Yeah.
That is the cask strength on this. And so it's got the mouthfeel you want. It's got the warmth that you want. And then when you make a cocktail from it, it really fights its own corner in that cocktail. So you get the texture. And I was even saying this to, I think it was Sarah. Apologies if I'm getting that name wrong. Sarah was a new hire. I walked in and I said, hi. And she said, hello. Like, didn't know me from a hole in the ground, which I get a lot. And I said, I'm here for Scott. And she said, right. And then kind of like with hesitation, like, give me a minute. Like, let me make sure this is a real
grandpa. That's what she said.
Exactly. Yeah. Is Scott his grandson? And so then she kind of disappeared and then came back and said, oh, yep, Scott's expecting you. Just go meet him in the back. Yep, tickety-boo. Start walking through. And as I'm walking through, I see Becky in her wheelchair. I'm talking away to Becky, talking away to Scott, giving hugs, saying hi. And then Sarah, if I'm getting that right, apologies if I'm not, comes walking by. And Scott says, Sarah, let me introduce you to Becky. And I'm like, oh, shit. If you don't know Becky Harris yet, you're never going to know Jason from Single Cast Nation. I'm way down the pecking order of people you are meeting.
Way down.
And so then I found out, brand spanking new hire, only just started. It's like, okay, this all makes good sense. So anyway, I'm talking to Sarah at the end, and she hadn't heard of a Toronto, and then we were talking about using cask strength whiskey in making your cocktail, and we both were talking about the texture, the mouthfeel in the Toronto that we'd made on site. So it was really cool, and the cocktail really delivered. And of course, the single barrel is cracking coming out the door. So terrific visit, really terrific.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing the hard work of going to one of our favorite distilleries and talking to one of our favorite people and drinking some of our favorite whiskeys and drinking one of your favorite cocktails.
Let me just say, you're welcome.
Well, listeners, there are no viewers this time around, so I get to just say, listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. If you have any questions, please send them into info@singlecastnation.com. Thank you as always for listening. Even though this wasn't a visual episode, please do go over to YouTube because we have videos there and we will be adding stuff there. youtube.com/@singlecastnation. And I guess until the next time, I know Jess will be interviewing someone very fun coming up.
It is. Yeah, we can actually, I hope I'm not going to lead the witness. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, Jess has someone very fun. Yeah.
Jess has got an interview ready to go October 15th. I'll leave it there.
Leave it there. All right. Well, until next time, Jason. Cheers to you. Cheers to the listeners. Cheers to Jess. Cheers to good times.
Scott and Becky Harris.
Catoctin Creek.
Bing.